Guess who's back?
Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Dos and Tres. Today we have a video on what is the current news going on in the NFL, what to expect for the 2020 season. Before we get into all of that, please subscribe to the channel. If you're new, like, comment, subscribe on the videos. We have a bunch of Dallas Cowboys and NFL content. Hopefully we'll have a season to be talking about here pretty soon, so subscribe and stay tuned for new videos. So let's get into it. Actually today, July 21st, we were just looking up, is the day that rookies for the Chiefs and the Texans reported. So we're starting to get some movement. Of course, there's a lot of news about the negotiation between the NFL and the NFLPA. So let's get into some of that. One piece of news, I think the biggest thing that came out is that
today, no preseason games.
Is no preseason games. That's one big one. And then also daily COVID-19 testing has been agreed upon between the NFLPA and the NFL, which is something that is implemented in the MLB and the NBA. Of course, the reason why it's much different with the NFL is because of the roster size. So,
yes.
I mean, it's going to be so many more tests. It's going to cost, I think, the NFL like $75 million or something for all the tests that they're going to need. But it's basically like a necessity.
Also, they're wanting to cut down the rosters to 80 for training camp to go in line with the reporting of daily testing, how much it's going to cost. A report from the Packers, because they're not they don't actually have an owner.
Yeah.
They're publicly owned or whatever. It was shown that $9.4 billion were spread across teams, the NFL last year.
I think it divvied down to like $269 million per team, something like that. So if you take into account salary cap and everything and all that, I mean, there should be plenty of money to go around. I think the big key, and also with the negotiations, is going into 2021, which is going to be a big part of, this, not just this year, but seeing what the NFL is going to look like next year, because there's going to be lost revenue no matter which way you look at it. Some of the other things is many cities already with stadiums, including one of the bigger ones, Philadelphia, have already said that fans are not going to be allowed to attend games.
Yes,
so
New York as well.
You can already pretty much throw that out the window. I mean, if I were a fan, I would prepare to as if there will not be any games held at your home stadium, which is something that I've been saying for a long time, and it's fine with me, just as long as we get to see the game somehow.
Real quick, how do you feel about just no crowd noise, no fake crowd noise or anything? Just let it be playing like that, right?
I think it's fine with me. I mean, yeah. I don't think. I know that I saw an interview, I believe, with one of the Fox anchors. It might have been Joe Buck, honestly, or it was Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman on a podcast. He was talking about on their broadcast they would pump in crowd noise, but it would be on the viewers' end. It wouldn't be in the stadium. It would just be an aesthetic type thing. So it sounds more realistic to us, not for the players. Because a long time ago we heard Kirk Cousins talk about him not caring if there were fans in the stands, and obviously with that implies crowd noise. I mean, honestly, these guys are professionals. Yes, it's a game that we're watching, but I think if they have less interference and with stuff going on in the field, it would actually improve their play, I would say, and take away some excuses and things like that.
I say up communication on both sides, but obviously be a level playing field when there's a home away team.
Yeah. Another kind of COVID-related news point is Oakley had revealed, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, a prototype visor face mask insert that would cover the mouth and kind of inhibit the dispersion of droplets from players' mouths. Of course, droplets is one of the biggest ways that you can contract COVID-19, and football, it's a contact game. I mean, these guys are going to be face-to-face with each other, especially on the defensive lines. I mean, a tackle, they're going to be face-to-face, so anything they can kind of implement to kind of try and limit the spread is going to be key. Just a piece of news that came up today, actually. Raiders owner Mark Davis, he was interviewed, and he said the NFL has basically three options. Continue as planned with players reporting, which, of course, today we said rookies are reporting for a few teams. I believe, RJ, you said it was the 28th is the day that veterans are going to start reporting.
Yeah, everybody reports. And
by August 1st, every team will report, because they're kind of on different timelines. Teams report at different times. So continue as planned with that. Basically, roll the dice and see what happens and go as planned. Push the season to November and play 12 games. with each team season canceling the interconference games, basically no AFC versus NFC games.
So the Dallas wouldn't play the Ravens, Browns, Steelers.
Yeah, the AFC North, which is who they're set to play this season. And then the third option is cancel the entire 2020 season. And of course, Mark Davis, he is part of the conversation, so what he says is pretty much, direct knowledge of what's being discussed. He said that's on the table still. It's not out of the question because they don't really know what's going to happen once they get the players indoors. It seems like today was a big news day. Today, the NFLPA announced that originally that was reported that was 95 players, was actually 59 players tested positive for COVID-19.
Staff, I think, as far as was 95 total.
Yeah.
Players. Just
players was 59.
Yeah.
Okay.
59. Yeah.
Okay. So they're already having players test positive. And I don't want to go into the medical end of the virus, but just because you get the virus doesn't mean you can't get it again. Just because you have antibodies does not prevent you from contracting the virus again. So it's not like, I know whenever Zeke got it, a lot of Cowboys saying, oh good, he'll get it out of the way 2 weeks and he's done. It's not over yet. He could contract it again and it could affect him again. So that's another aspect that all these leagues are going to be try and mess with and see what's going to happen, I guess, going into the season.
I think every single time there's something between the NFL and NBA, the NBA is always so far ahead.
Yeah.
And the NBA, they're in a bubble right now, testing every single day, lockdown. If anybody does anything, if anybody does anything to break the rules, there's a snitch line to say something about it.
Yeah.
And zero positive tests.
Yeah.
So it's like, you see what needs to be done. There it is. It's right there. As far as having your each, but here it's so hard because the size of the rosters, and you have every team being in different cities,
city to city,
and as far as what your staff and people over there are doing, as
that
far as
bubble aspect is going to be very hard to replicate for the NFL. You'd have to essentially have. The only way they could have it is 32 bubbles, which is basically what they're going to do, and then. Bubble. It's going to be very, very hard because of that aspect, the travel aspect, and the number of teams, the number of people on a staff, on a squad, coaches, trainers, everything, and then also the length of the season. They're going to be playing a full season, not a smaller season like the NBA or the MLB so far. So and then also just the nature of the game, like we said, it is a contact sport more so than NBA or baseball, much more than baseball. So the closest you'll get to a person is on a tag or something. It's very, very limited contact. So there are so many different moving parts that the NFL are going to have to kind of figure out here pretty soon if things are going to go down. So those are all the updates right now. So where are they right now? Right now, it seems like they have gotten all the health issues figured out, or at least the things that the players want to feel safe. But of course, at the end of the day, the big part is always the money. And we saw with the MLB, that was the thing that stuck all the way down to the end. Of course, this past weekend, the big news was all the players coming out and retweeting basically the same tweet. We want to play. The NFL has a lot of work to do but the NFL has a lot of work to do to make this safe and the precautions that need to be in place. So
I think this was the only time where I think what you saw between the MLB as far as like the owners and stuff really making it hard, and you finally saw that just give the MLBPA what they want, and this time the NFLPA got theirs a lot faster what they wanted, because at the end of the day your players are the product, and you're going to give in, especially in a situation like this, you need to go ahead and give into what they need.
Players.
Yeah.
You're not going to go and field UDFAs or anything, free agents, whatever. They're already limiting down roster sizes, which I'm going to get into a little bit towards the end. But so right now, the current issues that are on the table that are being discussed: player opt-outs for the season, which we've already seen in both the MLB and NBA. Players opt not to play this season because of issues related to the virus. And then, of course, the implications of this season on the 2021 salary cap. And that's going to be huge, especially if you're a Cowboys fan, because we didn't do a video on Dak, but because there's a lot of info about it, inform yourself about that situation. But the Cowboys screwed themselves by not signing Dak, and if the 2021 salary cap actually reduces, which if everything was in a perfect rule, it would have increased, then they're going to back themselves into a really, really hard corner, harder than it even harder than it already was, and that's going to be for a lot of teams out there that are going to be wanting to sign players, and it's going to be tough to operate with a tight cap whenever you have some big cap hits like the Cowboys or other teams out there like the Eagles, who are already going to be $60 million over next year. But anyway, so money concessions are going to be the biggest thing, the biggest sticking point between the players and the NFL. Are players going to get paid in full for the season, prorated season or something like that? Money being held in escrow was discussed. That's going to be the contentious point. Is it going to go all the way through training camp, when players are supposed to report? Probably. I don't think they're going to come to an agreement anytime soon on that. But at the end of the day, if football's going to be played anywhere in the country, it's going to happen in the NFL because of the money that's involved with it.
I feel like the best thing was the fact that there was no preseason games, because it kind of gives every single team the amount of time to, okay, if somebody does test positive, go isolate, do whatever everybody else tests, everybody getting tested daily. It still gives that amount of time to when's the opening weekend, September.
It's usually like the 7th or the 11th.
Yeah, anywhere between that weekend. Yeah. I feel like that's plenty of time to where you can still get prepared, even if it's a key player or not, and you can still cut down the roster size and have those guys practicing and be a little bit more. I guess what's the really downside of when you're having guys play that really like they're they're not going to make the team. So when you cut down to the last 3 or 4, that third, fourth preseason game. I mean,
of course, it cuts down your evaluation process. Maybe one guy would have been better than the other, but I think the limiting the roster to 80, it doesn't make sense to me. I understand they want to limit the number of people who can contract the virus and kind of bring it into the team, but I think that's an inevitability, somebody contracting it. So, look, the NFL is going to play, but I wanted to bring in this quote by J.C. Tretter. He's the center for the Browns, and of course he's also the NFLPA president, so he's been one of the most vocal guys out there from the very beginning about this. Going back to the CBA negotiations, he was at the forefront of that, informing players.
I know Byron said something too, but we'll touch on that.
Yeah, well, he was the representative for the Cowboys, and he may have taken that duty over to the Dolphins.
Very smart player.
His quote was a hypothetical quote, and it kind of echoes some of my thoughts that have been going around in our conversations or conversations with other people. So this is what his quote was. If the center, which is the position he played, tests positive on a Friday and there's a quarantine period for all of his close contacts, well, if I just came from the practice where I've been in a huddle with all of my offensive teammates, been doing individual drills with all my linemen, then blocking the defensive linemen and linebackers all afternoon, aren't we talking about 35 guys being close contacts with me? And if they're all in quarantine for the next couple of days, what does Sunday's game look like? You don't have enough bodies to put on the field to play. That's been my thing from the very beginning. How do you stay competitive? And you could, in that hypothetical and the one that I've been talking about, I've been doing receivers, but that's more likely as the offensive-defensive line interaction. Your starting offensive line is gone for 2 weeks. What are you going to do? And if your roster's already limited down to 80 players, and in the season it's already going to be down to 56 players, 60 players, 56, 60 players, how is the team going to stay competitive? And this could happen at any point. Somebody said, what if your starting quarterback gets COVID right before the Super Bowl? Wow. There's no way you can work your way. Yeah, there's no way you can work around it. Well, no, he wouldn't play.
Oh, who says he wouldn't play?
Well, if that's what's agreed on before the season, whatever's agreed upon, that's part of the contract. That's going to be part of what you sign and everything, because he's not only putting himself in danger, which is fine. You can sign off and do that, but every other player on the field is going to be coming in contact with that player.
See, but that's why I can kind of see a positive side to cutting it down to 80. You cut down the roster faster. You're going to get to your roster faster to what it's going to be like in week 1. So then maybe I'd say 2 weeks out, 2.5 weeks out, go ahead and have that roster set. And then it's okay, whoever gets it now, you know what I mean? It's more time to see, okay, if one of my star players does get it, he was with an offensive lineman, whatever, his group, then it's more time for you to go ahead and, this is my starting roster, these guys have to isolate, we'll get them ready for week 1, and there you go. You know what I mean? it's a faster cut down time to be able to be like, okay, shit, these are my starting guys. If one of them gets sick, we're good. Where you don't have to be worrying about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
I understand it's inevitable though.
One player, or the situation, the scenario that you're kind of talking about, and a lot of people are talking about, is one player. Typically, whenever somebody gets it, especially if they're practicing, it's going to be 3, 4.
Yeah, that's
5.
what I'm saying. So, but it gets to get found out sooner. As far as sooner as in more time before that week 1. Which is all
happen in season though.
That's
or it could happen in a playoff game, or a game to win the division title to make the play. It could happen at any point. That's the thing. That's why I'm saying competitiveness sake. We're talking about to get the season started.
Yeah. So I'm saying the best thing they can do for the roster towards
to play week 1, yes.
Yeah, to play week 1.
Limit the number of players, yes. But once you get to that point where somebody gets it in season and say he comes in direct contact with an offensive line, that team's going to.
But that's what I'm saying. But if that happens, I feel like there's less of a chance it could happen during. If you just go ahead and set it right here, these are the guys. You go into the season like that, and hopefully you can trust the other teams.
Less of a chance, yes. But humans are the variable. It's in everything. Yeah. Of course, we see it. How long does it take for people to wear a mask whenever it's been recommended for a long time? There are still people out there not doing it. So,
I that's why I understand
is a person's decisions whenever they're not at the facility, and that's why the whole bubble thing. It's going to be tough. How they're going to come?
You know how Jerry has had to babysit players throughout the past years or throughout years. I mean, he's kind of got to do that. Every team has to do that now.
Yeah, every team. But I don't know, man.
Because even though these guys are NFL players, these guys are our age and younger than us. They're guys.
Yeah, some of them are 21 or 22 years old. Coming into millions of dollars. It's gonna. Bad decisions happen on every team. I mean, you see them, get in car wrecks, get in fights, get drunk, DUIs, DWIs, whatever. Stuff like that happens. This is, you can expect people to make bad decisions. I mean, that's also an inevitability.
And there should also be a snitch line.
Well, there's probably going to be repercussions for doing stuff like that, I would say, beyond just, not playing, probably lose loss of salary per game or something like that. But see, whenever you start talking about the different scenarios as you go into the season, these are all things that are being discussed right now and should have been being discussed, way far back. And that's what people have been saying. The NFL had the luxury of time, but now, of course, just like with everything in the NFL, it's coming down to the wire. What some are saying is that the NFL is basically just going to force the hand of the players like the MLB did. Basically, well, we're here. Are you going to play or not? Type thing. And we saw with the MLB is going to play. So maybe the NFL saw that and they're going to kind of do the same thing. Well, maybe we don't have everything figured out, but you know what? We're just going to go out there and do it. And I don't know. It's going to take a collective effort of the players if they truly, truly feel like this is against their best their best interest of their safety and their livelihood, for all of them to say, we are not going to play.
Yeah.
There's always that happen? I don't know.
I don't know. There's always that one player on the team that, you go into this season or with anything, especially in high school or college, whatever, it's always like, there's always that one guy. There's always that one guy that's got to F it up for everybody else. And I feel like there's...
Well, you were talking about players that had to be babysit. If this was the 2012 Cowboys, everybody would be like, well, is Dez Bryant going to be able to hold it in? Is Dez Bryant, there's always going to be that one player on your team that, like I said, is a wild card that you don't know.
Let's go through the roster and say which player is most likely to F it up for the team.
Well, if we're talking about the Cowboys also, there's new leadership. So has that really been... implemented into the organization? Are players really buying in? There hasn't been any direct communication between player coach, meeting face to face since probably he was hired, and that was very limited.
Probably some guys that haven't even met McCarthy.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of guys that haven't met him because from what the reports were, it was basically pretty limited what his contact was with players before this whole pandemic went down. So
that's a separate discussion that we can dive into.
For just Cowboys specifically, but I don't know, man. This is gonna. just with almost anything that is usually going to take place around this time but is being halted by the pandemic, you either do it one of two ways. You postpone it, or you just say F it and we're going to try it. And usually with what we've seen, where it's like we're going to try it, it goes backwards and even worse than it was before, i.e. the reopening of states and things like that.
How long did the NBA postpone? 3 months? We were three and a half, 4 months?
Let's say they ended around March, mid-March.
Yeah.
No, it's gonna. But by the time they start, it'll be 5.5 months.
Yeah.
So April, May, June, July, and then the half of March. So 4.5 months.
Yeah.
So.
Damn.
I mean, and if the NFL postpones to November, like Mark Davis said, which is, I'm guessing, one of the proposals on the table, that'll be a postponement of 2 months. September, October.
I don't mind postponing the season as long as you really get a thing into place where, like, how could I say it? Guys, every
you need a bubble system.
Yes, every NFL team can get a bubble system that has the money to do so. Whether it's a facility there, Dallas has the luxury of a facility there, and there's a hotel and everything. Yeah. There's a whole entire place where everybody can sleep and stay at, and every other NFL team can do that also. But it's just a matter of.
So
what I'm basically saying is like kind of like a dorm type living.
Yeah, and that's what the NBA is doing.
Yeah, that's what the NBA is doing.
Most of the players, I mean, of course, whenever reporters are like, "Oh, they're on lockdown," and then a lot of players, it's not really that bad. No, they've come from different situations, way worse.
This is $1 billion industry. Yeah,
this is like a resort.
Yeah,
but with the NFL, it's 32 different teams playing cross country, so they're gonna have to kind of do the scenario I have in my head. What they're going to have to do is take a little bit of the MLB, a little bit of the NBA. So, taking from the MLB, reorganize divisions. You're going to play teams. So, Texans-Cowboys is going to be a game that's going to be played this year. Screw the schedule. Just going to redo the schedule. It's going to be teams in proximity. So, let's just say, for instance, a division is Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, Saints. That's a division.
Damn, that's a hard-ass division.
Now, but because they're in proximity to each other, that's a division. We'll look at it like that. And then you figure out what's going to be the neutral point. So in my head, taking from the NBA, the whole bubble thing, what I was thinking is you have 4 stadiums within every 1 to 2 hours distance of each. So for instance, Dallas, you have, of course, the Cowboy Stadium. Then you'd have TCU. You'd have Baylor. And then, hypothetically, let's just say they play at the Ford Center, the Star. That's another stand. Hypothetically,
no, Allen, Texas, or Allen Expo, Texas.
There's a shitload of stadiums in Texas that they can play. Let's just say you need 4 stadiums, and then what you do is, and someone said, well, what about college football?
There's going to be a college football.
There's one, there may not be college football, and 2, who gives a crap because it's the NFL and we're trying to make money here.
Yeah.
You play games Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. You play 4 games every day, and you figure it out. That's what it's. I think that is what it's going to take. Is the NFL going to be open to completely reorganizing and restructuring for this season? I think they need to be, because it's probably going to be the way to lessen the amount of impact of the virus on each individual team. Keep the amount of travel limited, keep the number of interactions as limited as possible, and that's the only way, distancing from people is the only proven way to not contract the virus right now.
And even if they weren't to restructure the divisions and keep the schedule or whatever and stuff like that, postpone it, I still don't think teams and players, I think they could come to an agreement that in between the sites, in between the locations, like if Dallas were to go play, let's say Philadelphia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Technically it's not a home or away game because there's not going to be any fans. I think they would still be open to meeting in a neutral site to say not having to travel as far.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
So limiting the number of places you actually play.
Yeah, you can actually
don't play at 16 different stadiums.
And actually have to travel to, which again, it's not totally wiping out the possibility, but it is lowering it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that pretty much covers all my thoughts on this whole thing. I mean, that's all the news. I mean,
we could have had this solved ourselves by like.
Well, I mean, I would have been trying to think of. I mean, I've been talking about my plan in my head for maybe the last 2 months. 2 months ago, I would have been thinking about how to reorganize and restructure, because, like RJ said, like the NBA, what they're doing and what the MLB is doing, they're getting their season going. Of course, like we said, it's different situations, but there are pieces of information and ideas you can glean from what they're doing and kind of implement into the NFL. But like Mark Davis, it just seems like they just want to push through. And
one thing about the NFL is that they're so still
stuck in their ways,
and kind of like older guys, where the NBA is more of a like
progressively.
They have no problem listening to guys like they're guys, which is like LeBron and all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm pretty thankful and surprised that cities are going out of their way to basically say there wasn't going to be fans, because I feel like the NFL would have pushed through and been like, we're going to go to this certain capacity and ticket prices are going to be jacked up, and and then you sign an opt out of we
did not have people going just because they want to go and they want to get.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, if a fan goes to the game and they do not opt out and they sign the liability form, but they still contracted, yes, the NFL is not liable, but it's going to be a complete shit show in the media. I mean, they're going to get drugged through the freaking coals if that were to happen. So I think the cities, honestly, they probably are bailing out the NFL right now. But I think that, like I said, I think that about much covers it. If you have any thoughts about this whole situation, maybe your idea of what you think would really get the season going, leave a comment below. Like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Like we said, NFL and Cowboys content. More is coming soon. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yo, I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you. Come along and